Oh, bless you, bless you. Thank you.
Okay,
I
there
said somebody to volunteer to. Thank you. Wonderful.
we
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So I'm giving you what a few of people here have been with me. We have been studying um, Buddha's teachings in various ways, and I just spent a little bit of time talking about very quickly who was the Buddha, and then the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path,
Yep.
quickly. And then people have written some questions down. I thought, might be easy, but please, you tell us
Yes.
how you would like us to proceed.
Oh, just go ahead with the questions. That's better for me to respond to something that people are actually interested in rather than me just sort of rambling on about something that nobody really cares about.
Thank you. Oh, how lovely. I'm going to mute the play sound. Yeah. So some people will be still coming in and joining us, but I will read those questions, and they're very good questions. One person says, how can we balance initiative with receptivity? Huh. Okay.
Okay. Initiative with receptivity. I mean, one of the things is I think it's really helpful. Like you gave an overview of the Eightfold Path, so that to reflect back onto right effort, because it's really, I mean, it's really interesting how, like oftentimes people talk, okay, initiative or focus or being energetic and all that, but the Buddha is really quite clear in how he defines, say, right effort, and it's not about how, say, energetic one is or how or what one's actually doing. It's much more what's the quality of mind, quality of heart that you bring to it. So that right effort is around, say, whatever effort is for the increase of wholesome qualities and particularly wholesome mental qualities, is a, or sort of just starting whatever is for the relinquishing of unwholesome qualities that have arisen is right effort, or whatever effort is for the preventing of unwholesome qualities that have yet to arise. Sort of, it has so that there's a recognition, okay, there's a habit here or a tendency, or I get triggered in such and such a ways. So one is putting the effort to prevention of unwholesome qualities, mental states from arising, and then whatever effort is for the arising, the bringing into being of wholesome qualities, skillful mental states that have not yet arisen, that is right effort. And whatever effort is for the maintaining of wholesome qualities, skillful mental states that have arisen already, that is right effort. So that it's not sort of defined as, if you just do this, it's, if you just do however many prostrations, however minutes you sit or whatever, you get it right according to the timer, I think you're doing right effort. It's more, what's the result? So that's from Buddhist practice, one has to really pay attention to that. What is the result?
Yeah.
What happens as we're doing?
Oh, goodness. I'm sorry, Ajahn. Ajahn, you are muted. How did this happen? Hold on. Would you unmute yourself, sir?
Yeah, I got there. I did. I'm unmuted.
I apologize.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a, how do you say, you were getting the shotgun approach on that one. So
Oh, yeah.
saving the day, but the
Yes,
spread was pretty wide.
yes, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, should I go to the next question?
Yeah, go to the next question. See what.
Okay. So, Sarit says, how does the practice of meditation teach us about the connection with the experience of suffering and the Eightfold Path?
Oh, just pay attention. Meditation is, because meditation is really about the cultivation of increased awareness, mindfulness, and observation, reflection. It's not about trying to make a particular mental state arrive and then blocking out everything else. It's learning how to pay attention to what the experiences actually are, and then recognizing what the quality is and how the effect is, and then paying attention to, because also say when the Buddha points to suffering, the word is dukkha, and it has a much broader meaning than just sort of emotional dukkha, or the experience of something painful or unpleasant. But dukkha is there's a huge range. So things like dissatisfaction, discontent, dis-ease, stress. Those are all manifestations of dukkha. Also, the Buddha points to, so there's different forms of dukkha, like I mean, it's just dukkha in the sense that when one experiences suffering, that is because of something that is painful, and that is that is suffering because it is actually unpleasant, and appropriate to that it's suffering. So then, but then there's also the dukkha that is, in the scriptural language, it is viparinama dukkha, which is the suffering of separation. So that is like when things are pleasant, or when there's happiness, or there's something successful, and one is attached to it, and one wants to hold on to it, or is dreading losing it, or so that there's, because of the pleasant, the separation from the pleasant, then there's dukkha. So it's like being able to see, okay, just paying attention, and then. But then there's also what the Buddha calls sankhara dukkha. So the dukkha of things being of a conditioned nature, a constructed nature. So whatever is of a constructed nature has many, many conditions constantly in play in order to maintain itself in that form. And of course, everything's falling apart. Or it has many facets to it. Nothing is just like black and white, right and wrong, absolute good, absolute bad. Everything is of a constructed and formed nature, so that it's going to one is going to be changing, but then it's also within the experience, whether it's of a physical thing like our bodies, like we're always, especially right now in a global pandemic, if one hasn't figured out this body is of of a constructed and uncertain nature, then one's really missing something. And but then also mental states, like like trying to just there's a subtle dukkha involved in constructing a state of peace, like samadhi, that a state of concentration and still it is constructed. So there's a subtle dukkha that is within that. So it's inherently dukkha, and so that's why when the Buddha speaks of, say, like of nibbana, this is unconstructed, like it's an unborn, unformed release from suffering. That is, so it's all these different layers. So we're learning how to pay attention and reflect and investigate. So because there's very coarse levels where they're suffering, but then there's subtler and subtler levels, and that's why the Buddha, like using the Four Noble Truths as a tool for teaching, is extremely skillful, because it's not putting it on it's not a personal statement. It's not an idealized form of anything, but it is the ability to pay attention to experience and recognize its unsatisfactory nature.
Thank you, Lumpa. So Mary says, where do I start learning?
Where do you start learning? Well, that's actually a really great question, because like you said, you gave the overview of say, like the Eightfold Path, or Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path, that one of the characteristics of the Buddha's teaching is that it's not a belief system. Like most religions that we're familiar with are, and it's kind of, you refer to them as faiths, like the Christian faith, the Jewish faith, and because they are the actual faith systems, belief systems, so you have to believe in it. But for the Buddha and Buddhism, it's an education system, a learning system. And the Eightfold Path, when it is shortened or when it's spoken about, it's called the Trisikha, and it means the three trainings. But training in the Pali word is sikha, and it has the learning and educating oneself in say from Buddhism is actually through doing, through training, through practicing. So like say with the precepts, you think of like the 5 precepts and the form of them in the scriptural language. It is like panatipata velamani sikhapadana samad. Like, I undertake the training to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. And the word is sikhapadana for precept or training. I undertake the precept, I undertake the training. The word is sikhapadana. And sikha, again, is a learning, education, training. And pada is like the foot or the foundation. And so the foundation for learning is actually engaging in some kind of action that we learn from. So that's the basis of training. Or if you look at say in terms of meditation, like the Anapanasati Sutta, the discourse on mindfulness that the Buddha gave, it has 16 kind of steps to it. 14 of those steps, the most important verb is sikati, which means to train, to learn. I will train thus. Being say, mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath while experiencing the whole body, or while experiencing the mental formations, while lifting up gladness into the mind. So these are, or while contemplating impermanence. These are all trainings to be undertaken, learnings to be, this is what we learn from. So that sense of learning is embedded in the Buddha's teaching, in that sense, the whole sense of precepts, what's called sila, some of virtue, meditation, wisdom. These are all things we train in, we educate ourselves in, we learn from. So it's an ongoing learning process.
Thank you. So Lumpa, for Mary, would you say that she might study the Four Noble Truths and then go put it to test?
Yeah, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, that's really, you can start there and you can finish there.
Okay. One, thank you. I miss you, Lumpa. So Ellie says, how to get out of a stagnant space while being kind to ourselves when we feel like we aren't moving forward.
Well, I mean, part of it is I think one of the things that's really important to recognize, in, say, from Buddhist perspective, how is the importance that the Buddha places on having good spiritual friendships, and drawing close to good spiritual companionship, spiritual contact. So that's of course, we need to make some effort ourselves, and of course that reflection back on right effort is helpful. But then also recognizing the power of the people we associate with, or the contact that we have. How is that affecting us? How do we draw close to people and situations that do, excuse me, nurture a sense of interest, or stimulate another perspective that helps to take us out of certain stagnant cul-de-sac that we've ended up in. And we all end up in places of boredom and frustration, and I remember Ajahn Sujito sort of saying that, the Tibetans, they have their practices with like 10,000 or 100,000 prostrations, and in the Thai forest tradition, we're much more sort of recognize, say, the 100,000 frustrations. So, it's just, but learning how to, I'm stuck, or I'm, this is or this is really boring, and it's ordinary. But it's sort of looking at, okay, how's that? What's that coming from? And then drawing close to good examples of people who one wants to take advice from, or to emulate, or to listen to for guidance and encouragement. So there's that famous discourse where Ananda is really excited. He's been meditating during the day. He comes in the forest. He comes back in the evening. He's had this brilliant insight, and relates it to the Buddha, and saying that, I had this insight today, and it's really excited that 50%, half of the practice is having good spiritual friendship. And the Buddha said, no, Ananda, it's not half of the practice. It's all of the practice, having good spiritual friendship. So that being willing and able to reach out to others and draw close to others. I mean, there's sometimes in, say, like in American culture, there's just such a emphasis on the individual, and the hero riding alone and doing everything. As a Buddhist practitioner, that doesn't get us so far. It's, the practice really relies on support and conditions around us, and conditions being other people and good examples and guides for us.
Wow. Thank you. Lumpa, it's your tea time. Would you like to have your tea?
Well, I'll have it after. It's sitting right next to me.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have a question from a colleague of mine, Mitra Manesh. She's a secular UCLA teacher. She's accomplished. She's asking, could you please take us deeper to acceptance?
Acceptance. Well, I think one of the things is, if, say, from a Buddhist perspective, say that, like seeing and investigating dukkha, the dissatisfaction or unsatisfactoriness, suffering in different ways, is really key. But it's not just an analytical and an intellectual exercise. It really needs to be coupled with a heart of loving kindness and compassion. And in the traditional, say, descriptions of practice and the chants that we do when we're focusing on loving kindness and compassion, the very first person that one directs kindness and compassion to is oneself. And it's oftentimes one that people sort of overlook or feel a bit embarrassed to do, or not so comfortable. But it's really essential. So that sense of acceptance is through recognizing how universal suffering is. Everybody suffers in some way. I remember, what comes to mind is a really wonderful teacher who I traveled with, acted as his attendant and translator for sometimes. He was a very famous and respected monk in Thailand. He's passed away now. And he would begin his Dhamma talks. He was very well known as a Dhamma teacher, and his would be regularly, say, like on radio, and then people would flock to his monastery to hear his it would be a Sunday discourse and teaching. And but he would always say, what, begin his Dhamma talk by welcoming everyone who has come as friends and relatives in aging, sickness, and death, and the experience of suffering. And it was really quite beautiful because it was done with such kindness and recognizing that universal aspect of as a human being. Yeah, we experience the fruits of our greed, hatred, delusion, but then also it's through that kind of acceptance that one is sort of, well, I am not any different than anybody else. And what I call I is really a construct. And what anybody else thinks of themselves is a construct. And that's not just some philosophical theory. It's like, oh, this is how we experience the world. We experience the world through the lens of our own biases and delusions, and that's really worthy of compassion. And it alerts us to our own limitations, and it sensitizes us to the limitations of others. But it also gives us a really skillful tool and motivation for freedom from that. It's just a bad habit, really, suffering.
Thank you. I think you answered the question from Randy, who was talking about impermanence and tragedies and all that. So I will let that go. Roger is asking keys to equanimity.
Keys to equanimity. Well, I mean, one just similar to what I just said. I mean, that willingness to look at suffering, to really, because oftentimes we don't want to have to deal with that suffering. We don't have to deal with our own moods. We certainly don't want to deal with the moods of others. And that kind of that pushing it away or avoiding it's really avoiding the inevitable, which doesn't work. So that willingness to turn attention through mindfulness and investigation and recognizing that the natural reality of all things come into being because of causes and conditions. And if we understand those clearly, then we don't get caught in the, say, unskillful reactions to it. We can respond skillfully. And equanimity is a skillful response. And that ability to just to see things and to and not be shaken by, as like the one of the refrains that Lumpur Samayado keeps pounding us with, and is that it's like this. And whether you like it, well, it's like this, or you don't like it, well, it's like this. And it's just being willing to, oh, it's like this. This is what it's like. that tuning in to what it's like this, and tuning into what the experience is, rather than trying to fit it into some ideal of what you think it should be, or trying to avoid it because you think it shouldn't be like that. But equanimity really comes from that, oh, yeah, it's like this. And getting caught in our reactivity is adding an extra layer of suffering and dis-ease that is not really helpful. So it's and so equanimity we start recognizing that, and equanimity is not indifference. Equanimity is an ability to see things clearly and to not be shaken by. This is just kind of an unshakable quality within the heart that sees things clearly, recognizes what's skillful, what's unskillful, what's right, what's wrong, but then is able to not be shaken by anything.
I cannot help it when I see you for the first time, Lumpa. I shake. That is, I think that's a good thing. Of joy, of course. So a couple of questions. One person says, how long have you been living at a monastery? Another says, what is the diet of a monk? So I thought I combined the two.
What is the
diet? So how long have you been at a monastery, and what is the diet of a monk?
Diet of a monk? Oh, okay. I've been at Abhayagiri for 23 years, beginning of 1997. So I've been at Abhayagiri, but then of course I ordained as a monk in 1974. So that's a while ago. And so, yeah, and I lived in Thailand all that time. I trained with Ajahn Chah, and then I was the abbot of the International Forest Monasteries, a branch of Ajahn Chah's. So I was the abbot there for 15 years before coming to America. So there, I've, what is that? That's like 46 years as a monk, I guess. And yeah, my good fortune. Diet is interesting as a monk. I mean, you have some restrictions, but the restrictions are more around it has to be offered. I don't have it, so that we don't have any means. I don't have money. I can't touch money, can't hold money, can't control money for my personal benefit. So I can't get what I want, which is great. You have to learn how to accept what is given, so that so diet is I say I live on a diet of gratitude. And you never know what the heck you're going to get in terms of food. We can make choices. We can make personal choices sometimes when it's there, but sometimes it's really not appropriate to be too picky or choosy, and or too worried about sort of some pure diet of some sort. And if anybody has been on this planet, and especially in the West for any length of time, you realize every few years there's a new diet that's the sort of some new fad diet that's going to cure everything and turn you into somebody who is always healthy and is never going to get old and sick and die. I mean, it's good luck. But just a lot of it's around a balance of getting to know what your own body needs or uses. Into how does it? What do we digest? How do we respond to certain foods? And oftentimes, like when I was living in, especially when I first went to Northeast Thailand, the diet is Northeast Thailand is the poorest area of Thailand, and it is and it how do you say, they are, it's kind of like that hunter-gatherer type. I mean, they're farmers, but their farming tended to consist of mostly because the soil was very poor, and everybody had small plots of land, so they'd have sticky rice. At their homes, they would have a small plot of garden for more like herbs, so that chilies and garlic and onions and few herbs for seasoning. And the food, you go to the forest and you collect leaves and shoots and roots and tubers, as well as basically anything else that moved was fair game and went into the pot. So from birds and squirrels and insects, I mean, I've eaten everything. And you have to learn how to be not picky. And again, that sense of it's what people have. They're very poor, and they really don't have in Thailand in general. They don't really have say like a culture of vegetarian. They do now increasingly, but that's because there's the increased prosperity.
Thank you, Ajahn. Yes. Often people wonder if there is meat, why aren't Buddhists so restrictive about meat, eating meat? And I say because they have to take what is offered.
Yes, yeah. And it's a luxury that it's like in the West, the access to huge variety of food and the ability to make those choices. And when you're a subsistence farmer, you don't have a lot of choice, and then you share with the monasteries what is available to you, which is excess, or what you can give, so that the monks are really tied to the communities around them. Every day you go on alms round, and you rely on what is given, and you can't store. One of the rules for the monks is not to store food. So once the meal is over, especially in a in a like here at Abhayagiri, then we have lay people who are living in the monastery, and they help with the kitchen, they help with the cooking, they help us survive. Um, and because by our rules, we're not allowed to cook, and we're not allowed to store food, but still we try to keep that spirit of, and that was from the time of establishing Abhayagiri, that we made a kind of a policy of not to use any of the donations that were given to the monastery for purchasing food. The general funds were given for the monastery, and we really want to rely on whatever is given, so people would show up. In the early days, we didn't, things were pretty sparse here. I can remember Ajahn Jodhipalo talks about it, because he was the anagarika at the time, and so he was like kitchen manager and the cook. And there's a Laotian woman, Kamla. You've been up here many times. You might have met her. Nowadays she doesn't come so often, but in the early days, she heard about the monastery. She came up at the meal time and saw what was being offered to the monks, and she burst into tears. And then started coming. She lived in Santa Rosa, and she would come up 3 times a week with food to offer to them. And of course, Ajahn Jodhipalo loves telling that story, because he was the cook.
No, I have personally learned so much in the kitchen. Just staying over and over and over all these years, I've learned how to cook so much better, because whatever is there, you have to cook. There is no.
You don't sort of go in, and it's just you have to make it up with what's there.
Yes, I tell people my cooking, I owe it to the kitchen at Abhayagiri. Thank you, Ajahn. So there's a couple other questions. One is from Chang, who is a much more newer student of mine. He says, I want to ask, is there a difference between being mindful and equanimous of thoughts and feelings versus trying not to think too much about them, or trying to face them or work through them to get to some insight?
I think that's where one has to go back to that very first question that I lifted up, the theme of right effort. So like, effort isn't just sort of struggling with something, but it's the engaging in a particular, like directing attention in a particular way is effort. So that learning how to recognize, well, what is the result? I mean, certainly mindfulness is always needed, in the sense of awareness, attention, that we're able to direct to knowing what our experience is. But then part of mindfulness is also evaluation, and as well as effort. I think like the classic definition of mindfulness in the discourse that the Buddha gives on mindfulness, say the Satipatthana Sutta, and then of course in many places, it's like a stock phrase that comes up over and over again when the Buddha describes mindfulness. And the first quality is concerning effort. That there's the effort for relinquishing things that are a stain on the heart, on the mind, so that there is an effort to those things that agitate or cloud the mind. There's an effort to relinquish that. And the word that the Buddha uses, atapi, which is it's like literally sort of means like burning up, in the sense of there's a transformation that takes place. And the next quality is like clear comprehension. And so that and clear comprehension requires a certain observing, reflecting, investigating what's appropriate, what's going to work in this situation, what is the situation, so that there's an attunement for the inside and the outside, and there's so that there's this clear comprehension of a purpose, in the sense of what am I actually trying to accomplish, and then what is actually going to be useful, and then the clear comprehension of kind of non-entanglement or non-investment in self, because we get so much self involved sometimes we try too hard, and so that trips us up as well. So that's there's that investigation and reflection on the situation, our own mental state, the results that happen because of that, how we're responding. And then the next quality is possessive mindfulness, and being one who is rooted in awareness and knowing. So that sense of coming back to the knowing, being present, being aware, being mindful. And then the last quality that the Buddha points to is mindfulness is also that which helps us lead away from the likes and dislikes that we have toward the world. And when I say world, it's important, and I mean, that's the word that's used, but then when the Buddha is asked, well, world, what's the world? What is the world? And the Buddha says, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind, this is the world. So it's like the external, what we perceive, and the internal of what we conceive. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, good. Thank you. So, Ajahn, there are two other questions about letting go, which I think you have touched on a lot, about relinquishing and all. But one of them is talking about letting go of indecision, fear, and
Yep.
specific.
Well, I think certainly one of the things is recognizing the excuse me. Recognizing the kind of because indecision is oftentimes there's like doubt, wavering, uncertainty, and it's just recognizing how that I mean, that's painful, and that in itself is suffering, because sometimes we're trying to do we want to make the best decision, and then we're uncertain about it. We're undecided. We can't quite decide. And but then that sitting on a fence is really just as painful as making a mistake. Because sometimes we're afraid of making mistakes. We're afraid of committing to something that we might, and there's obvious things that we know, okay, that's really not, we really shouldn't go down that track. But there's lots of other things that, it really is uncertain, it's unclear. And sometimes one has to um, just go ahead and make a commitment to make a decision to go ahead. But then you have to be committed to reflecting and recognizing any mistakes or any faults that are coming from that. And not blaming oneself, because oftentimes that fear of not doing the right thing is kind of it's just a kind of an attachment to self, of not wanting to be perceived in a certain way. But then our that indecision and hesitation is just as crippling as anything. So one realizes one has to be willing to make mistakes sometimes, and admit them, and be humble about that, and have a willingness to either to acknowledge, or to oneself or to others, or to apologize. Oh, I really got that wrong, and asking for forgiveness. So there's a humility that's needed to be able to be willing to make mistakes, and that's, we really do learn, or usually learn from our mistakes. And but we, oftentimes we need to be willing to commit to something, rather than just sitting on the fence with indecision and uncertainty.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. So, Lumpa, I think I've covered the questions, which is amazing. I'm so glad about that.
Yeah.
And hopefully, our being organized and efficient will inspire you to come back. I'm planting seeds.
Yes, yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I mean, that's, I think, this pandemic's not going anywhere soon. So
Yes,
I
yes.
think the use of the technology is we're going to have to be relying on it for some time. So.
Yes, yes. So, just a couple more minutes. I wanted to report to you that the two classes that we are in right now, with going beyond mindfulness and looking at life's realities, so we could be happy.
Yeah.
Based on your recommendation, I used the book of Buddha Nature, Human Nature by Ajahn Suchito, which
Oh,
is
great. Yeah.
extremely rich with
Yeah.
data, statistics, and all kinds of teachings. And I have to report that, it's a little academic sometimes and a little difficult, but then the gist of it, the soul of it, has really inspired all of us to make
Great.
tremendous. I myself, talking on my own behalf, I have made tremendous amount of shift in my own mindful living.
Oh, wonderful.
I
Oh,
thought I was conscious, I was, but in detail, things that I do with trash, with, and then I gave one project that I'm very proud of actually. I asked people to think about a creature that they despise, they hate, they resent, they have aversion towards, like a cockroach or, ant or spiders and things that I wish that wouldn't be. I said, think of that, choose one, and please do a research project, which they would answer 3 research questions. One is,
Mm.
what is the role of this thing in this ecosystem on this planet? What the heck is this
Right.
fly doing here? Why? And then, so what benefit does it bring to the chain of ecosystem? What would happen if this would just completely go out of existence?
Right, right.
To the ecosystem, and then
Yeah.
how would that consequence directly impact human being? And
Yeah,
oh my
right,
god, things have really revealed themselves. We have
right, right.
such amazing things people have found that
Oh, that's wonderful.
incredible. And then part 2 of it was, okay, please find natural ways to repel them instead of
Mm.
thinking to kill them. And my
Yeah,
purpose was to shift awareness and shift relationship to
yeah,
those creatures as if we are, like Ajahn Suchita says, we are dominant. We're dominating everything. And
right.
many other teachers say that if human being didn't exist, planet survive and would be happy.
Oh, yeah. The planet would do great. Yeah.
Planet What if the worm wasn't a worm, population wasn't there, a bird population, a
Yeah.
cockroach population, any of them were not there, if doomsday comes for so I want to thank you for recommending such amazing journey for us.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
yeah, I intend to put together the results of people's findings and then publish them and offer them.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it'd be really interesting.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Thank you
Oh,
for your time, Lumpa. Please tell us.
okay. Well, yeah, I'm really happy that that this happened, and we'll see what happens in the future.
Yes.
Yeah, look after yourself.